Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Tuesday, February 15th, 2020. It is season 3, episode 5 tonight of Live with CDP podcast. And I'm looking forward to speaking to my guest tonight. The gentleman's name is Bob Socci. He's the radio play-by-play announcer for the 6-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots on 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. And he took over for the legendary Gil Santos, the longtime Patriots radio announcer for 36 years back in 2013. And he's been paired with Scott Zolak, a former NFL quarterback, former Patriot, since 2013. And together they've called, Scott and Bob have called 4 more Super Bowl appearances for the Patriots, 3 Super Bowl championships. The one loss was to the Eagles in Super Bowl 52. So just bear with me, and hopefully Bob will be on shortly. I'm looking forward to talking to him about the 2021 New England Patriots, what their outlook looks like for 2022, and the overall development of rookie quarterback Matt Jones, and also about the retirement of Tom Brady and they're one of the greatest defensive ends in Patriots history, Richard Seymour, being elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So anyways, guys, I just want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe on Facebook and on Twitter, and also on my audio platforms, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and LinkedIn as well. And I'm just going to put that right on here. And also, you guys, you can check out Bob on Twitter at Bob Socci as well. And while we're waiting for Bob, I'm just going to play a little video clip of a radio call him and Scott Zolak did in Super Bowl 51 in the greatest Super Bowl comeback of all time. Just 1 second, guys. And this clip is courtesy of YouTube. Just 1 sec.
Right and left. 2nd and goal to go from the 2. Toss sweep right for James White. Pucks it under the right arm. Puts it upfield. Driving forward. Diving to the goal line. A touchdown. And a title for the Patriots.
I can't believe it.
They have completed the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. Led by the greatest quarterback.
Look at Brady
in Super Bowl and NFL annals.
One more ring.
James White. And a silver trophy is coming back to New England.
I love this team.
The confetti, the streamers falling from the roof of NRG Stadium.
I don't care.
That radio call was courtesy of 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston as well. So, guys, just bear with me. Hopefully, Bob will be on in a few minutes, and we'll talk some New England Patriots football, as well as Super Bowl 56 as well. Since I'm just waiting for our guests to come on, anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to ask me as well. Since we're waiting, just to let you know, guys, my next Live with CDP podcast after tonight is going to be Thursday, February 17th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. My guest will be Jack Moore, the TV play-by-play announcer for the OHL's Kitchener Rangers and Oshawa Generals for Rogers TV. He's also a former long snapper for Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawks football as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Jack about the Kitchener Rangers, the Oshawa Generals, and some OHL talk as well. And since I got you guys here, here's one of my questions for tonight. CDP question. Will there be a 2022 Major League Baseball season? Yes or no? My gut feeling is there will be a season, but I don't think Major League Baseball season's going to start up until July. So we'll see. But I think this lockout is going to continue, and I think it's going to be July when they start up, and I think it'll be about an 82 game schedule. So hopefully I'm wrong on that. But normally spring training camp guys are reporting. I think the pitchers and catchers report on February 15th, and the players report the next week. But looks like right now spring training is going to be delayed, and hopefully they can get some kind of deal done sooner or later. But I was hoping to go to a game at Comerica Park this summer to see Lou Whitaker's number one be retired by the Tigers, which was long overdue. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, guys, if you're watching this podcast on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, please feel free to comment and ask me some questions. But I do think there'll be a Major League Baseball season, but not until July as well. And also, guys, you guys can check out my new blogging, wordpress.com/home/live with CDP podcast, .wordpress.com. I'm going to be doing daily blogs, probably 3 or 4 times a week on subjects that interest me, like sports and stuff like that as well. So please check out my blogging on wordpress.com as well. And also, guys, as you know, Super Bowl, the Rams, Cooper Kupp won MVP of the Super Bowl 56 after 92 yards, 2 TD reception against the Bengals, 8 catches. Some people were saying Aaron Donald should have got it. I would, I really think both of those players were critical. I don't know if the NFL's ever had a co-Super Bowl MVP, but I think Stafford, Coop, and Aaron Donald, I think they all should have been co-MVPs. But Coop's a great player, so. But I wouldn't have been upset if they gave it to Aaron Donald, who was a disruptive force in that fourth quarter, especially pressuring Joe Burrow as well. And also, guys, like I said, we'll see what happens with Super Bowl 56 next year. Or sorry, fifth Super Bowl 57. I can speak, guys. Super Bowl 57 will be next year at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. So it'll be interesting to see if the Bengals can get back to the Super Bowl, or Buffalo can get over the hump, or Kansas City regains their throne as the AFC champions. So we'll see what happens there. But I know as for the Cincinnati Bengals, they had a great year. The fans should be happy. They won a home playoff game for the first time in 30 years. They won 2 playoff road games at Tennessee and at Kansas City, and they nearly won the Super Bowl against the Rams. So, but I do think the Bengals do need to address one major issue with the team, and that would be their offensive line, because Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl got sacked 7 times, I believe, and at the end of the game, he had a wide open Chase, the receiver, for a possible game-winning touchdown, but he couldn't get the ball to him because Aaron Donald, who's a great player, pressured him, and Burrow had to throw the ball away. So I think the Bengals right now need to work on their offensive line, because to me, you're not going to win in football if you don't have a good offensive line or a defensive line. And what really won this game for the Rams, as much as I like Stafford and Coop, was the Rams front four in the fourth quarter really got to Burrow and pressured him, sacked him, hit him, and threw him off his game. So it all really starts in football with the O-line and the D-line as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed my podcast yesterday with Tommy Condell, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I really appreciate Tommy coming on. He's pretty well worked every job in football, except for head coach. He's done assistant coach, he's done receivers coach, linebackers coach, offensive line coach, quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator. So and Hamilton's got a very good team next year as well. And it should be Hamilton and Toronto battling out for the Eastern Conference in the CFL. I am working on getting more guests from the CFL to come on as well. And also, guys, just to let you know about my guest, Bob Socci was recently honored for his work in the broadcast booth and was named the Massachusetts Sportscaster of the Year by the National Sports Media Association. And Bob just finished his 9th year as the radio play-by-play voice of the 6-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. And you can catch him and Scott Zolak on 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston during NFL season and when the Patriots are playing as well. And also, guys, just to let you know, the 2022 NFL Draft takes place in Las Vegas, April 28th to April 30th. So we'll see what happens there in the draft, but should be interesting. The Eagles have 3 number 1 picks, and hopefully Howie Roseman hits on all 3, because that would speed up the process for the Eagles to be a contender next year in the NFC East and possibly the NFC if they can hit on these number 1 draft picks as well. And right now it's about 160 days to Philadelphia Eagles training camp. So 160 days to go, guys. And as for the CFL, I believe it's about 120 days or so or less for training camp starts in the middle of May. So I'm looking forward to the 2022 CFL season, and also the Toronto Argonauts with getting Brandon Speedy Banks and Andrew Harris, and picking up Chad Kelly as well, the quarterback, Jim Kelly's nephew. So I think Penball Clements and the Argonauts have made some nice off-season moves, and I expect the Argonauts to have a really good team next year, as well as Hamilton, and of course Winnipeg will be a good team as well. So I'm just, give me one moment. I'm just going to check on my guest. Hopefully Bob will be on here soon. Like I said, I really appreciate him being able to come on for a second time and talk some Patriots football, and also get his thoughts on Tom Brady and Richard Seymour, who was in the Hall of Fame as well. I was happy to see Cliff Branch, the longtime Oakland Raiders great receiver, finally get in the Hall of Fame, and also cornerback Leroy Butler from the Packers get into the Hall of Fame. And of course, Dick Vermeil, Super Bowl winning coach with the Rams, and also a Super Bowl coach, didn't win with the Eagles. And to be honest, he was responsible for restoring the Eagles into winning franchise again, because from 61 to 77, the Eagles missed the playoffs. Vermeil took over in 76, and then 78, 79, they made the playoffs, and then 80, they beat Dallas in the NFC Championship game, and then went to the Super Bowl against the Raiders. They were the heavy favorites to win that Super Bowl, but unfortunately didn't. But Dick Vermeil was one of the big reasons why the Eagles were restored back into winners. And look what he did with the St. Louis Rams. And to me, he's one of the best coaches in NFL history. I'm happy that Dick Vermeil's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as well. There's one player I'd like to see get in the Hall of Fame, and that would be Steve Tasker. I do think more special teams players need to be in the Hall of Fame, because special teams is a critical part of a football team. Obviously, you got your offense, your defense, and you also got your punter, your kicker. But to me, special teams is very important. And to me, Devin Hester from the Bears and Steve Tasker should get in. And eventually, I think Reggie Slater from the New England Patriots should get in as well. I just think, like I said, they're the third element to a football team, and it's not just offense, defense. And to me, special teams is huge, like with field goal kickers, punters, and guys on special teams. And to me, Steve Tasker was one of the best. To me, he's the best special teams guy of all time, obviously. And also, when I had Stu Boyer on, Tasker played receiver a few times, and Jim Kelly lobbied for him to be more smart football player, high football IQ, and he had good hands. And I think Steve Tasker would have made a really good receiver in the NFL as well. But he was so valuable on special teams. And his son, Luke Tasker, had a nice career with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL from 2013 to 2019. He played 6 years with Hamilton and is now a color analyst on the Tiger Cats radio network as well. So, like I said, guys, anybody who's watching this podcast right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, if you have any comments or questions, please send them through, and I'll do my best to answer them. And hopefully my guest will be on soon. Like I said, sometimes things happen, so you just have to learn to audible. So like I said, guys, I get another podcast coming this Thursday, February 17th at 8:30. Again, Jack Moore from Rogers TV does play-by-play announcing for the Kitchener Rangers and Oshawa Generals. And then Friday at noon, Friday, February 18th at noontime, I'm going to have Barry Davis, the former radio personality on the Fan 590 and former Blue Jays TV host, coming on talking about his career in radio and television and what he's doing outside of broadcasting now as well. And I'd like to talk to him about his career, also doing the Blue Jays TV hosting as well in 2015 and 2016 as well for their playoff runs as well. And let's see, guys. Let's see. Thoughts on the 21 NFL playoffs and Super Bowl 56. I'm so happy Stafford got his first trophy along with Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp was deserving his MVP, but you could say Aaron Donald and Matt Stafford were just as important as Coop in winning that Super Bowl as well. And it all starts with defense too, and they disrupt Cincinnati's offense in that fourth quarter. The 2021 NFL playoffs were absolutely crazy. Every game basically came down to the last second, last possession. And the Buffalo Kansas City game, I don't know if you ever duplicate that game again with 25 points being scored in the last 2 minutes. So it was obviously heartbreak for Buffalo. And then Kansas City the next week had a 21-3 lead at home and blew that to Cincinnati. So Buffalo had their heartbreak, Kansas City had their heartbreak, and now Cincinnati as well. And the Bengals now unfortunately join the Bills and Vikings in the Super Bowls with multiple Super Bowl losses. The Vikings are 0-4. The Bills are 0-4, as you know, lost 4 in a row. And also the Cincinnati Bengals are now 0-3 in the Super Bowl. They lost twice to the Niners in the 80s, 1981 and 1988. And then they lost 2021, obviously, to the Rams. The Bengals' 3 Super Bowl losses have been by a combined total of 12 points. So the Bengals really could easily be 3-time Super Bowl champs or 2-time Super Bowl champs if they had a little more luck. They were all in all 3 of those Super Bowl games. And the last 2 have been heartbreak with Montana's John Taylor with that winning touchdown, I think with like 33 seconds left in Miami. And then this game, Stafford to Coop with 125 left. But yeah, it's a heartbreak city for Cincinnati. But I think Zach Taylor did an excellent job with the Bengals this year. And Joe Burrow, if he can stay healthy, will be their franchise quarterback for the next 10, 15 years. And if they can upgrade their offensive line, which I think needs to be done big time in that way. So, and I'm already looking for Super Bowl 57 next year in Glendora, Arizona as well. And as for hockey, guys, just give me 1 sec. I just needed a slug of drink there. Anyways, the Guelph Storm are back on the road tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 7 o'clock against the London Knights. The Storm are 5-1 against the Knights this year. This game's at Budweiser Gardens. Larry Millot will be calling the game for CJOY 1460, and it'll be on Rogers TV London as well. And then the Storm return home this Friday, February 18th at 7:30 against the Saginaw Spirits. The Storm will be able to have 50% capacity at the Sleeman Center again with the restrictions in Ontario being loosened. So it'll be nice to actually have 2,500 fans in the Sleeman Center. And then I think the Storm take on Owen Sound on Monday, February 21st, Family Day. Guelph Owen Sound at 2 o'clock, Family Day. The game is not on Rogers TV, but it will be on CJOY 1460. And originally it was supposed to be the Greyhounds, but they switched that up as well. So just to let you know, guys, here's the proof that I was at Tom Brady's first ever NFL game in Monday, July 31st, 2000 at the Pro Football Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. It was Bill Belichick's first ever game as head coach of the Patriots. Brady was the 4th-string quarterback on the Patriots after Drew Bledsoe, John Freese, Michael Bishop, and himself. And Ken Dorsey was playing for the Niners then. My friend Todd got Ken Dorsey's autograph. I wish I'd gotten Tom Brady's, but I kept the ticket stub, and it's not in mint condition, as you can see, but I've had a gentleman from the New Jersey area offer me $250 Canadian for this ticket. So I don't know if I want to sell it just yet. This is kind of a historical ticket stub because, like I said, Tom Brady's first ever NFL action in that game. And also it was Dennis Miller's first game in the Monday Night Football broadcast booth as well with Al Michaels. And also that game, I ended up having food poisoning, eating at a local restaurant in Canton, Ohio. And I originally didn't even want to go to the game because my stomach was hurting and I had food poisoning. It wasn't very pleasant, but I sucked it up and I went through the game. It was hot and humid that night. It must have been in the upper 80s, early 90s, but I was glad to be at that game and just to see Tom Brady in his first ever NFL action. He was pretty good in the second half against San Francisco. Ironically, Michael Bishop, the third string quarterback, he ended up coming to the CFL and playing with the Toronto Argonauts. And he had a decent career in the CFL, but like I said, they drafted Brady 6th round, 199th overall. And not a lot of people, including myself, gave him much of a chance to make the NFL. But that game, he was impressive. And ironically, it was against his favorite all-time football team, the San Francisco 49ers, who bypassed him in the NFL draft. A lot of teams bypassed Tom Brady in the NFL draft. And you know what? I've been lucky in my time over the years going to football games. I've seen Tom Brady play, Steve Young play, Peyton Manning play, Brett Favre play, Aaron Rodgers play, Boomer Esiason play, Jim Harbaugh I've seen play, Doug Flutie I've seen play. So I've seen a lot of great quarterbacks over the years going to games in the CFL, obviously, and the NFL, obviously, and really lucky. And like I said, I used to say Peyton Manning was the greatest quarterback of all time. He is one of the best, but you still got to go with Tom Brady. And honestly, I don't see anyone ever breaking Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowls. As great as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert of the LA Chargers are, I don't see anybody winning more than 2 or 3 Super Bowls. I don't think anyone will come close to Brady's 7 Super Bowls. I always thought Joe Montana and Terry Bradshaw's 4 Super Bowls as a quarterback would be unbreakable, but Brady's obviously broke that record and done it by 3 more. So I think that's one NFL record that'll never be broken at 7. As great as these young quarterbacks are, this NFL is so competitive. It's going to be hard for somebody to win 2, 3, 4, 5 Super Bowls. And I don't think, whether you like them or dislike them, I don't think anybody will ever see a dynasty with like the New England Patriots again, winning 6 Super Bowls in, I think, a 20-year period, which is outstanding. So all I know is the Patriots this year had a decent season. They went 10-7. They made the playoffs. They did struggle at the end, losing 3 out of their 4 last regular season games, and then getting hammered in Buffalo by Bills Mafia 47-17. But having a first-year quarterback like Matt Jones come in, Matt Jones threw 22 touchdown passes, 13 interceptions, and then you had a good running game in Damian Harris and Stevenson, and then they had a good defense. I think they were in the top 3 for NFL defenses. Obviously, they didn't show it in the playoffs against Buffalo. And I would say my opinion on the Patriots for 2022, they have a very good offensive line. They got the franchise quarterback in Matt Jones. They got good special teams. The defense is fairly solid. They could use another pass rusher. And also, I think the Patriots do need a big name receiver. Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers are okay. They got 2 decent tight ends in Smith and Hunter Henry. So yeah, they've got good tight ends, but I do think they need that number 1 big time receiver. I think Kendrick Bourne could be a number 2 and Jacoby Myers could be a number 3, but I really do think they need that star wide receiver in New England to spread out the defenses and let Mac Jones throw the long ball a little more as well. And with Bill Belichick, there is some going to be some changes with the Patriots coaching staff, obviously. And they did lose their longtime offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, to the Las Vegas Raiders. So, yeah. So Belichick has to make some decisions and hire some new people. He did bring back Joe Judge from the former New York Giants coach who was fired. So he's back on staff. And I think they're going to be looking at possibly, I've heard rumors of Bill O'Brien coming back as their OC guy, but we'll see. And I've also heard Matt Patricia as well, who's the former Detroit Lions head coach as well. So we'll see what's going on, but we'll see. I think the Raiders, we'll see if Josh McDaniels is a better coach in his second term than his first term with the Denver Broncos. I do think he has some nice pieces with the Raiders, especially with quarterback Derek Carr. So we'll see what happens there as well. And also, guys, like I said, I'm just going to keep talking. If anybody has any comments, please just give me a comment on here, ask me a question. I'll feel free. You guys can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. By the way, guys, my guest has just arrived, so just give me one moment, and I'm going to bring on the radio voice of the six-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. Just bear with me, guys, and I'm really appreciative of Bob giving me some time tonight, and we'll talk a little Patriots and 2021 NFL. Good evening, Bob. How you doing?
Chris, I'm doing better now. I'm connected. And my apologies to you and the audience. I'm sorry to keep you waiting for me. I had a technical issue, trying to access the podcast. And I am not the most technically savvy. I figured it out eventually. So here I am. Thank you.
No worries. Actually, I had a little problem with my laptop tonight too. I had to reboot my computer, and thankfully it worked fine. So I'm cross my fingers nothing else happens.
Yeah, fingers are definitely crossed here for sure. Hopefully, we have a glitch-free conversation here after, at least technically. Who knows what I'm going to say? Get myself in trouble, but
definitely,
nonetheless.
Yeah, no worries about that, Bob. And also, I've learned to ad-lib. And one of the guys from the Raptors, Eric Smith, told me that too. Chris, sometimes you got to roll with the punches. Guests are going to be late. Things happen. So that's one skill I've been learning the last year since we've talked, is to ad-lib and just to keep the show going on.
Hopefully, spinning a few stories about your beloved Detroit Tigers, maybe in kind of a southern drawl like Ernie Harwell, the legendary voice of the Tigers.
Unfortunately, I was going to say, unfortunately, I don't know if there's going to be a Major League Baseball season right now with the owners and the players.
It doesn't look good, and I think that the lords of baseball, so to speak, have done conceivably everything, or at least I thought they had done conceivably everything to really tear down the game, and the game itself and the way it's been played has caused, I think, the defection of a lot of now former baseball fans, and as well has affected the lack of the enjoyment factor for a lot of young people. But now with baseball ownership, including some of the proposals that I've seen, some of the conversations that at least have been reported on between the owners and the players, at least some of the things that the owners may have on the table. It's so disheartening, to put it mildly. As someone who grew up with baseball as my first love as a child in Central New York, and spent 20 plus years in professional baseball calling it at the minor league level. So I think that, when I look at what's happening now in baseball, and Major League Baseball in particular, but baseball as a sport from the youth level all the way to the top, it makes me sad. It makes me angry. It makes me frustrated.
And you're a Mets fan too, right? Correct?
I grew up as a Mets fan for sure. Yeah, but even the Mets as much as the Mets have continually made it difficult through the years because of the product on the field, and have tested, I think, fans' loyalties as well with ownership under the previous administration, the previous regime, if you will, the Wilpons. This current Mets administration is equally challenging in many respects, if not more so, to maintain the loyalty, at least of this fan. I grew up as a huge Tom Seaver fan, Tug McGraw, Rusty Staub, a kid of the early to mid 70s with some bad Mets teams, a World Series team in 73, eventually, of course, the world champs in 86. And ever since then, a lot of frustrating years. But I think some of the stuff off the field and in the front office, the last few years in particular, have really been unnerving, to put it mildly.
Well, we'll just cross our fingers and these owners and the Players Association can get a deal struck together, because right now I'm already missing football, and it's only been 2 days after Super Bowl 56.
Yeah, but you have we have the CFL to look forward to, at least in the spring, right? So that's
Yes.
around the corner, hopefully.
Yeah, my podcast yesterday was one of the offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Tommy Condell, and he's been across the states, Cornell University, McNeese State, and he's one of the brilliant minds in football. And I think he does a great job in the CFL with the Tiger Cats.
It's a fun game to watch, that's for sure.
Definitely.
The Canadian Football League. It goes back again to my youth in upstate New York. We had a CBC affiliate on our local cable system out of Kingston, Ontario. So I grew up watching, some CFL football then. And then, of course, early on, and people today that know ESPN as a worldwide leader may not recall that the CFL was one of their prime properties in the early years, at least as I remember it, with the Canadian Football League broadcasts on ESPN. Not only that, ESPN published a book to accompany the telecast so American fans could learn the rules of the CFL. It was titled From the 55-Yard Line. Yeah. And only up until a few years ago, I had that book. I think we made a move and it got lost in the transition. Wow. But Bob Lee, the great ESPN reporter and anchor, used to host a regular show, I believe, on the CFL. It's been a lot of fun. I remember, as a kid, going back to the earlier days, Warren Moon and Dieter Brock in the Edmonton Eskimos and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Joe Pow and the BC Lions. So
Tom Clements, Tom
Clements, absolutely. Yep. The Alouettes. There were some high-profile defections from the NFL. Mark Gastineau was among them. Yeah. At one point, going to the Canadian Football League. I remember Conridge Holloway, the great Tennessee Volunteer, who was a very good player in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm hoping to get Warren Moon on my podcast one day too, because that Edmonton team back in the late 70s and 80s, I know the Patriots are a great dynasty, 6 Super Bowls, but Edmonton won 5 Grey Cups in a row, and I don't think you'll ever see a team in any professional sport win 5 championships in a row. It's just so hard to win back-to-back as the Patriots did it, but it's now been 15 years since a team has won back-to-back.
It really is amazing to think about that, and I remember watching the teams of that era, as I mentioned, with Moon in particular, and thinking of making the association between the Eskimos and the great Green Bay Packers dynasty of Vince Lombardi, mainly because of the uniforms, from a visual standpoint, but obviously as well with the championship run that they had. And, it was great to see Moon succeed in the NFL, but I still remember watching him in the CFL for sure.
Definitely. Hey, I just want to say congratulations on being the Massachusetts Sportscaster of the Year award by the NSMA. I was just reading up on that.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's very humbling in a lot of ways. It's very surprising in every way. And I really say it's nice to be recognized by my peers, at least the people that voted on it locally, that at least they respect, if not what I do, then the way I do it, the way I go about it. I really appreciate, they're just being considered for it, let alone winning it. And so it's more. And when I first learned that I was going to receive it, it was impactful. But then after I got it, I was named the award winner this year, and heard from people locally and some of my colleagues outside of the market. That meant a lot, and it added to it, obviously, enriched it. When I think about the Super Bowl, Chris, the Bengals and the Rams just played, and I had some communication with one of my colleagues who was calling that game, and he mentioned to me, what a reminder it is of what a great fraternity we have, what a great broadcasting community we have, all the different people that reached out to him prior to the game. And I go back to my own experiences before the Super Bowl, and I relate this latest experience of winning that award or being named the winner for Massachusetts to those Super Bowl experiences as well, because I know it was great to call the games, and I don't take that for granted. And it's great to have Super Bowl rings, which I've been blessed to receive. But I think the greatest reward for me in calling all those games, but especially the first one, was just hearing from so many people over the course of my career who had an impact, or in at least some small way influenced my career, if not in much larger ways influenced my career, simply by their moral support. And in a lot of cases, I was really pleasantly surprised to hear from people, because I didn't know I had that many people in my corner, that many people that respected me and appreciated what I did. So that's very meaningful. Thank you.
Well, congratulations. And everybody I've had on my podcast in your industry has been really great and supportive of what I'm doing. And it's been 2 years since I started my podcast, and I'm just continuing to grind away at it. And hopefully one day I'll get that opportunity.
Well, we've chatted before, and I've been on this podcast before. I always appreciate your approach, your enthusiasm. I think you do your homework, which is extremely important, obviously. But more than that, I think the passion comes through. And certainly appreciate all of your feedback on social media, and as well your contributions in a very impactful way to the charities that I try to support and make known on my social media platforms. So I really appreciate you as a person and a professional.
You're very welcome. And like I said, everybody has been really great to me with what I'm trying to do as well. With switching careers at my age, I'm trying to be one of these guys that's like these undrafted players that make the NFL or the CFL or sports. They kind of inspire me because they didn't do it the conventional way by getting drafted. They never gave up on their dreams.
Well, Chris, as I said to you before, I think it took me a long time. I got a chance to call my first professional baseball game in 1991, and I didn't reach the highest level of sports. And I dreamed of all of them, but I didn't get the opportunity to work at any one of the major leagues until I was hired to broadcast the Patriots in 2013. I spent a lot of time in minor league towns, primarily on the eastern coast of the United States, but I spent a little time out in the Southwest. I've lived in 3 time zones. I've bounced around a bit. Peoria, Albuquerque, 3 summers in Albuquerque, calling AAA baseball out there, but as well Frederick, Maryland, Delmarva, and Salisbury, Maryland, North Virginia. I pinch hit in Syracuse and Charlotte, wherever I could, to get experience calling games, and of course, broadcast a few times, to say the least, in some of the great Canadian towns as well. Remember going up to Edmonton and broadcasting a series there in the final season of the Trappers, and as well called games in Ottawa as well before
the Ottawa Lynx
moved, and love the experience. 2 of my favorite road trips, far and away.
Definitely. And I'd like to see some AAA teams or AA teams come back to Canada as well.
Well, it's really a shame what's happened to professional baseball in Canada, particularly, when I think about my own career as teams were relocating, and I was fortunate. I benefited from the move of the Calgary team to Albuquerque. The city of Albuquerque had lost its baseball team for years. They had the Dukes, a dominant team in the Pacific Coast League as a Dodgers affiliate. Well, they relocated to Portland, Oregon, and so Ken Young, who was an owner of several minor league teams in the U.S., purchased a franchise in Calgary, a Marlins affiliate, and moved it to Albuquerque. That opened the door for me to start calling their games. So I benefited from that. But I remember, games when I was in upstate New York as a kid, going to watch teams like St. Catharines and Welland play in the New York Penn League. A number of teams from Canada, of course, at that point in time, were at every level of minor league baseball. London, Ontario, for years,
Yep.
AA team.
Yep.
Vancouver, the Canadians. I mentioned Edmonton and going out there. It's sad to think of Canadian baseball at the professional level. And of course, the Expos, too. I mean, the Expos were a successful franchise before ultimately they were doomed to fail only because of the ownership situation. The Jeffrey Loria and, the ownership there could have a franchise in the States, and Washington could eventually get a team. But I remember when Montreal was one of the first teams to draw 1 million people. 1 million people, 1 million fans per season was a big deal.
Still. Yes, definitely. I was going to say, speaking of the Expos and Tom Brady, they drafted him as a catcher. And I'm going to ask you, Bob, do you think Brady could have had a Hall of Fame baseball career if he went into baseball?
I have no idea. I never saw him play baseball. I will tell you this: he was drafted as a catcher, but
Yes.
in that same draft class, the Expos drafted another catcher, if I'm not mistaken, as well as an infielder who became a catcher in the big leagues. And those two guys had long and successful careers in the major leagues. One was Michael Barrett, and the other
Yes.
was Ryan Schneider. And I only know that because I called the Delmarva Shorebirds in 1996, and that team had 6 future major leaguers. Among them, Orlando Cabrera. I mentioned Brian Schneider. Michael Barrett was on that team as well. I remember he started out at third base in the South Atlantic League. We had a couple of outfielders as well who wound up getting to the big leagues eventually, including one who was a star in Japan, Orlando Seganol. But Jose Macias became a very good utility player for the Expos. Javier Vasquez was one of the aces of that team. Was a 19-year-old out of Puerto Rico. That was one of the most enjoyable seasons I've ever had calling sports at any level in any sport. Was the 1996 Delmarva Shorebirds. They 1 year as an Expos affiliate. The franchise was relocated from Albany, Georgia, and I had just missed the Vladimir Guerrero and Holberg Cabrera team, but I got a chance to see Orlando play. He was a second baseman. He wasn't the shortstop on the Delmarva Shorebirds, but he was the second baseman on that team. And Javier Vasquez, like I said, was the ace of the staff.
Definitely. Are you okay for a few more minutes?
Yeah, let's talk. We're talking baseball and and about me. What do you want to talk about?
No, I've learned to go with my guests as well. So I just wanted to hit you up on a few questions as well. I could talk to you for 2-3 hours, but I don't want to keep you for 2-3 hours. But one question I wanted to ask you about: thoughts on the retirement of Tom Brady. Will he come back? And what was it like announcing his games from 13 to 19? And thoughts on Richard Seymour finally getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I'll take the latter one first because it's a shorter answer. I think it's well deserved. I never had a chance to call Seymour's games. Of course, he was out of the league by the time I started calling the Patriots, long gone from New England after being dealt late in his career to the Raiders. And, I think about the first 9-10 years of Richard Seymour's career, 8 or 9 Pro Bowl appearances, with a position that didn't have a lot of stats to point to, but he was a dominant player. And for a 3 or 4 year period, he was a guy that was probably as dominant as any defensive lineman in terms of his role on that New England defense, and a real key for those Patriots championship teams in the early part of the dynasty, because those teams, as we remember, initially the strength of them was their defense. And Richard Seymour was a draft pick out of the University of Georgia. It was criticized when the Patriots made that pick, and Bill Belichick took him in the top 6 of the draft because he didn't have a lot of sack production in college, but just a tremendous player. And as I mentioned, he was really a key for people like Mike Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi, as they have said, to have the impact on games that they did. And with Seymour as well, he's a guy that really, I think everybody who dealt with him in the media appreciated him. He was also unselfish. He injured himself 1 year playing fullback for the Patriots. He was used situationally. And to think about a guy as good as he was on defense and being willing to go into the offensive backfield and then getting hurt, I think it said something about him as well and his value and why people respected him. So I'm very happy that he got in. I think it was overdue. I think that I was very happy for Tony Baselli, who I've gotten to know a little bit as well as a broadcaster for the Jacksonville Jaguars and Westwood One, and it took him a long time. And it should be hard to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but I think it's richly deserved in each case. And as far as he's concerned, Chris, the short answer to the first question that you had, not would I be surprised if he comes back? Would I think he will come back? I wouldn't be surprised if eventually he comes back, just as I wasn't surprised that he retired at the time that he did, particularly given some of the reports that were coming out ahead of time. I was surprised in the way he did retire, the way it was handled, with word leaking out, being reported over the weekend prior to the AFC and NFC championship games. But that really didn't, and as well the announcement and some of the controversy here locally, the criticism and hard feelings that were caused because of his omission of the Patriots in his Instagram statement when he officially retired after the unretirement denial. So the replies from his agent and his dad and others between the first reports that he was going to retire and then the statement that Brady made on social media that he was indeed stepping away from the game. It's been noted he did not use the word retire, so I should say that as well. But I think despite all of that, to me it was a privilege to call every one of the 7 seasons that I did while Tom Brady was the Patriots quarterback. I was treated to so many remarkable moments, a lot of drama. Things that we took for granted around here that I certainly did too often. And it started with game 1, the Buffalo Bills opener in 2013 in Orchard Park. It was my first game as the team's broadcaster. The Pats were down by 4 in the fourth quarter. They get a field goal. Brady leads them back down again, and Stephen Gostkowski makes the game-winning field goal with 5 seconds left. And that team, which ended up in a disappointing finish, falling to the Denver Broncos shorthanded, and Brady, whose stats really tailed off from previous years, that team was deemed a disappointment. And May thought his career was, if not at a crossroads, perhaps even, the window was closing. And they nonetheless had all these dramatic comebacks. They rallied against the Saints and won in the final play. They rallied from 24-0 and beat the Broncos in overtime. They had a couple of other dramatic wins in improbable fashion as well in successive weeks. And so for me, right away, I was able to witness and experience that Tom Brady magic and see and appreciate and feel, why he was the greatest player to be at that point in time. He was I think yet to really cement his status. I think in New England he made the case that he was the best of all time, but outside of this region, a lot of people I think could make a strong case for Joe Montana, as well as others. Brady was stuck on 3 championships. Well, then in year 2 for me, the Patriots come back against the Legion of Boom and the Seahawks and placed terrifically down the stretch of that game. They win again in 2016 after falling behind 28-3, and of course beat the Rams in a low-scoring 13-3 final. But nonetheless, Brady on the final few drives for the Patriots was at his best again. Rob Gronkowski deep down the left side to set up Sony Michel's game-winning touchdown, the only touchdown in Super Bowl 53. So I think about those moments, but as well, as those experiences of calling the biggest game in sports, at least outside of the World Cup final, and being in those stadiums as Brady took that stage, it's also going back training camp practices and watching the way he warmed up and the way he carried himself. And he was extremely nice to people outside of the locker room in his time here. From my experience, that stood out for me. I think, as big a celebrity as he's become, as he was, and certainly by the time I started calling the games, that status had already been established. And for me, what really resonated was how he prepared, how he talked about the game when he was asked football questions. He had a great way of, and a very polite way of saying nothing often at the podium. But then there were times when he gave really thoughtful answers and explained, the game extremely well from the quarterback's perspective. That certainly was a key takeaway for me. But then most of all, and beyond anything else, it's really just who he seemed to be despite that status, and I say that meaning a really nice guy, and I always appreciate that about him.
And that's just as important as being a great player, as being a great human being as well.
Beloved teammate.
Definitely. Speaking of that, I finally found the ticket. I had stashed away, and I've had somebody offer me $250 for it. And this was Bill Belichick's first game as head coach of the Patriots too, I believe.
And that was also Giovanni Carmazzi's first game, right?
Yes.
One of the Brady 6 for the 49ers.
Yes, and Ken Dorsey, I believe, was on the 49ers too. He's now the new offensive coordinator for the Bills. But that was the game I had food poisoning. I'm glad my friend talked me into going because I didn't feel good at
gosh.
all. And I sucked it up and I went through it. The game was about 85, 90 degrees, and it was on a Monday night. And it was Monday Night Football with Al Michaels and Dennis Miller, too. And I remember Brady coming in the second half, and he stood out at that first game against the 49ers. And I couldn't believe he was number 4 on the depth chart at the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. An amazing part of the story too, right? That he was that the Patriots were willing to keep 4 quarterbacks, and that he had to go from number 4 to number 1. Obviously, everything about those couple of years and his circumstances is beyond believable in many respects. By Hollywood standards, right? 4th quarterback, 199th pick. The list of guys were taken ahead of him, including the aforementioned Carmazzi and the other 5 of the Brady 6. The injury to Drew Bledsoe against the Jets. 9/11 happens. Brady takes over. The Patriots eventually get on this run, kind of a magical finish to the season. And Brady injures his ankle in the AFC Championship. Belichick sticks with him again, and Tom in the Super Bowl wins the MVP award. They didn't have great numbers in that game. Obviously, the defense of the Patriots against Kurt Warner and the greatest show on turf, they were really the collective MVPs until that final drive when Brady took over deep in the Patriots' own end and moved them down the field with Vinatieri hitting the game winner. And then, oh, by the way, in between, there was the tuck rule game in the Snow Bowl against the Raiders, and that unforgettable comeback as well in the snow before Vinatieri hit the game-winning field goal in that contest. So many documentaries about Tom's career, Tom's life, some of them of his own doing, of course. So he's been an open book for a long, long time, and we've had a lot of glimpses into his reality in a managed way, of course, in Tom versus Time on the Facebook platform, his docuseries a few years ago, and then of course more recently, Man in the Arena. But what I think stands out more than all this recent chronicling of history was that kid backward ball cap, on the stage in the Superdome after the Patriots won against the Rams, or in some of the early interviews that he did with Steve Sable. And, there was an innocence about him, and he was kind of dorky, going to the podium and meeting the Patriots press after the aforementioned game against the Raiders with a Scully cap on, newsboy cap. Just far from the Tom Brady that would attend the Met Gala with his wife, Giselle.
Okay. What was the most memorable Tom Brady game you called?
Oh, man, there's so many. I think that my favorite game is the AFC Championship in 2018 when the Patriots beat the Chiefs in overtime. And Brady was sensational in overtime of that game, hitting Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski for several third and long conversions before handing off to Rex Burkhead to win it. I don't remember that solely for Brady. That's more of the complete performance by the Patriots and the circumstances of playing in Kansas City, getting back to that one more Super Bowl 53, to win their 6th title. The overwhelming environment, the crowd, the noise, the lack of Patriot fans, the travel, the freezing temperatures. That's what made that experience as great as it was for me. And I think that's why the Patriots reacted to, and Brady especially, with unbridled joy. But you could point to Super Bowl 51. I think Super Bowl 49 is the best of the Super Bowls that I called involving Brady. But I go back to, even, like I said, the first game and that whole season of 2013, and what was one of his poorer seasons of his career. And certainly for me, as the team's broadcaster, that was, I think, a season that I saw him and thought, wow, this guy's the greatest ever. And then I realized a year later, wow, he's even better than I thought. There's just so many moments, because I can't single, just with regards to Tom, I can't single out any one particular game in which I remember most for him. The Super Bowls, I think 49 was the best against the Seahawks.
Okay, definitely. Are you okay for 5 more minutes?
Let's do 5 more.
Yeah. Okay, deal. Just quick thoughts quick overall thoughts on the 21 Patriots and your quick assessment of rookie quarterback Mac Jones in his first year.
Yeah, well, they certainly made strides, obviously. They spent so much on free agency, which really became a necessity because of the failures that they had, frankly, in recent draft classes and the deficiencies they had in a couple of key areas. And I think for the most part, they paid off this past year. There were certainly some players that did not produce as anticipated, as hoped for, like Nelson Aguilar and more than anybody, Johnny Smith. But overall, I think the transition now for this team from the post-Brady 2020 with Cam Newton at quarterback with a very short-handed team, going through that season and playing in front of an empty stadium at Gillette Stadium, and most of the empty stadiums on the road, finishing 7-9, with a reset of sorts, injecting a lot of life and excitement into this Patriots organization for the fan base with what the Pats did in free agency. And then, of course, drafting Mac Jones 15th overall in the first round and him beating out Cam and earning the quarterback's job and then really playing, I think, very well as a rookie for most of the year. He perhaps hit a wall late in the season, but I think it's a very promising situation for them with the quarterback. Despite the disappointing finish, they did not play well down the stretch overall, particularly on defense and special teams, which was a major disappointment for them all season long. So this was not by any means, a year where you say, okay, they've put themselves in a position now to take a big step next year, because I think they have a lot to address in every phase: offense, defense, special teams. They lost Josh McDaniels, their offensive coordinator, who's outstanding, and a number of other coaches, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it remains to be seen how they're really going to address that and whether they can do it adequately, and how important that is for the development of a young quarterback. I don't think can be overstated. So I think, like I say, they've had a promising year. They invested a lot. I think they had an excellent draft, not only with Mac Jones, but with Christian Barmore, with the way that Ramondre Stevenson played. Certainly, a couple of the other draft classes from 2019 and 20 had players emerge: Damian Harris, Kyle Duggar. But nonetheless, going into 2022, while they now know they have a quarterback, they've got their guy at that position. They don't have the question they had at the end of last year. Who's going to be the quarterback? What are they going to do to address that position moving forward? They know Mac's the guy, but they still need a lot around him and a lot to develop. And again, they're going to have to do that with a coaching staff that's undergone significant turnover, and including the loss of a guy that I think was as good an offensive coordinator as there was in the league.
Do you think Josh McDaniels now more ready to be a head coach than he was the first time with Denver?
I think so, and I hope so. Josh has been very public and very open about many of the mistakes that he made in Denver, and they start with interaction, communication with people. How he viewed other people in the building, how he treated other people in the building. I remember reading a piece that was beautifully done by Dan Pompei, now of The Athletic, but I think at the time it might have been Bleacher Report, where he spent a lot of time with Josh, and Josh relayed the story that his dad told him after he was fired by the Broncos. Within a day or two of his firing, his dad told him, look, write down everything you would do differently. Write it down now. Everything you do differently the next time you get this opportunity. You don't want to forget it. And Josh did that, and it started with how he interacted with people, relationships. In my time here, I saw a lot of growth in that area for him. So I'm optimistic for him. I think a lot of Dave Ziegler, the new general manager with the Raiders. So I won't be rooting for the Raiders when they play the Patriots next year. And it's hard for me. I was not a Raiders fan, anything but as a young football fan. But I hope he does well. And I think that he's learned, but we'll see. Time will tell.
Okay. And I'm going to wrap this up, Bob, but I just wanted to ask you quickly just tell my audience quickly about your fundraising effort for the Flutie Foundation for Autism and running and getting prepared for the Boston Marathon. And where can my audience donate and also find you on social media, Bob?
Yeah, well, Chris, thanks very much. With Doug Flutie, of course, we started with some CFL talk, and of course, the great Calgary Stampeder himself, Doug Flutie, whose son, Dougie Jr., was diagnosed with autism a couple of decades ago, and he and his wife started the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism. And it's a great organization. Doug is still involved, but there's a full staff that does so much great work. Well, he primarily resides in Florida now. They do a lot of work locally and in some cases nationally too, but primarily as a support organization for educators, employers, employees, individuals and their families in the autism community, really trying to provide a full array of services and opportunities for people in the autism community. And my son was diagnosed on the spectrum. He's a high functioning autistic boy. He was diagnosed at the age of 2. We're very fortunate. We had early intervention. We've seen a lot of development and don't need a lot of the kind of services, but it's given me a really good appreciation of what's involved for so many families. And for many of the people that the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation help, it's comprehensive, it's year-round, it's day after day. And so it's a great organization that does a lot of good work. And I'm part of their marathon team to raise money for the foundation up until the Boston Marathon on April 18th. And I've been soliciting donations online. I've got a couple of raffle drawings that I need to get going. I had a little setback this past week. I had a little physical setback. So I'm going to get back in my training and get out for a run again today for the first time in about a week. And I need to pick up the fundraising as well. But you can find me on Twitter at Bob Socci, BOBSOCCI. That's probably the best place on social media to follow me. Same handle on Instagram. And I'll post some links to my charity fundraising effort on those different platforms.
Definitely. Okay, Bob, I'm going to let you go, but I just want to say thank you for coming on my podcast for a second time and really enjoyed talking some baseball with you, CFL, and New England Patriots football as well.
Chris, I appreciate your time and your patience, and I will say that the next time I will be on time and I will be better prepared to have a coherent thought and be more concise. I know I definitely stress the limits. I'm right up to the boundary, if not over the boundary, when it comes to verbiage and time limits. So I'll be better next time, I promise.
No need to apologize, and I really enjoyed talking to you. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you on social media as well.
Always, my friend. Take care. Okay.
You too. Have a good night, Bob. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast with Bob Socci, the radio voice of the 6-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots on 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. And also, guys, can check out Bob on Twitter at Bob Socci. And he's also doing a fundraising effort for the Flutie Foundation for Autism. And he's running in the Boston Marathon on April 18th as well. So he does have a page where you can donate if you wish online as well. And you can also check out, if you're an NFL fan or a Patriots fan, you can check out the Patriots website at patriots.com. And I'm going to wrap this show up soon. But I just want to say thank you, everyone who watched live on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't. Facebook and Twitter, thank you. And also, Live with CDP podcast will be downloaded on my audio version to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And also, guys, you can follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP there as well. And just before we wrap up this podcast, guys, just 1 second. My next Live with CDP podcast, guys, will be this Thursday, February 17th at 8:30 p.m. That's 8:30 Eastern. Guest will be Jack Moore, the TV play-by-play announcer for the OHL's Kitchener Rangers and Oshawa Generals on Rogers TV. So I hope you guys can tune in to Live with CDP Thursday at 8:30 with Jack Moore. Again, I want to say thank you to Bob Socci, the radio voice for the New England Patriots, for coming on. And hopefully I'll have him on again in the future as a guest. So anyways, guys, I'm going to call it a show. I hope everybody has a great night, and please come on back and tune in to Live with CDP or listen to the Live with CDP podcast Thursday night at 8:30 with Jack Moore from the Kitchener Rangers, Oshawa Generals, Rogers TV. Thank you again for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys Thursday night at 8:30 for another edition of Live with CDP podcast, season 3, episode 6.